And welcome back. It is Ray Michaels here, Grassroots 50, Total News and Total News Nation Network. I am here with the one, the only, it's Rick Green. How
Man,
are
I'm
you?
glad to be anywhere I get to team up with a fellow Patriot like you, brother.
I'll tell you what, you probably heard Patriot Academy for years and years. I've been watching Rick and David Barton from Wall Builders, and I'll tell you, it has been inspirational, and I've taken a lot of your training and I've brought it to my legislative district here in Maricopa County, Arizona. And I'll tell you what, the response has been overwhelming. People come to just one of your classes and they tell me, Ray, we've learned more in one, 90-minute session than they've learned in 2 months going these other places. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Well, you know, for so many years, I got to work side by side with David Barton and ask all the dumb questions. You know, I mean, it was just great because he's such a encyclopedia. You know, he's got the largest private collection of founders' documents in the world. He's got so much of it memorized in his head. He's read so much of the founders. You can ask him about pretty much anything in the founding era and right off the top of his head. So 20 years of that, I kind of figured out what are the questions people most often ask, what are they the most hungry for, and so we put these classes together because I hate boring history. I hate when people make the most exciting story so boring, and so we wanted to make it entertaining, and that's why we got Kirk Cameron and David Barton and Tim Barton and Rabbi Lappin and Jeremy Bourne and all these people together and said, okay, let's tell the story and let's just shock people every week. They come to class, they're going to be jaw on the ground going, nobody ever told me that. And here's the best part, it's shocking, but now here's something you can do about it. Here's an action step. And so people leave the class every week with hope, and I can guarantee you if you take the class, and I can say guaranteed because we've had over 6,000 classes, over 1 million people go through it. I guarantee you, you'll find hope, you'll find community, you'll get together, just like what you're seeing. You get together, when the video's over, you start, you know, iron sharpening iron with each other. You start talking about what you can do in your community to make a difference, and then it just grows from there. And then people start running for office, and we just see it over and over again. So it really came from learning at David's feet for 20 years and then just applying it all.
Well, I'll tell you what, we did a couple of the classes, and when you see David Barton, you know that he talks very fast. It's drinking out of a fire hose, right? So we decided in our classes that after we went through about 45 minutes, we had to stop and just kind of digest it and talk about it and everything. So yeah, it's amazing.
I can tell you a funny story. So you talk about him talking fast. Whenever we did it on DVD for the longest time, right, and streaming, and then we made these thumb drives. And I told the guys that were designing the thumb drive, I said, you know, I always listen to podcasts in 2 times speed, except Ben Shapiro. He's the only one I can't do that with, right? But I said, everybody talks about David talking so fast. Why don't we make it on the thumb drive where you can slow us down? So we did that. You can slow it down to say. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you there, but I thought that was funny.
No, it's amazing. It's so much information, and you get stories every time you watch it. I've probably gone through the class, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. But you get these stories that you don't even know. One of the stories that came up was the Hoosier State.
Yeah.
And this is so amazing because when you know the background and the history, you're like, what's a Hoosier? We don't know what that is.
And then you find out it's a black preacher that preached to thousands and thousands of white people. And everybody wants to think that we've always been so racist in every part of America that we're evil and that would never happen. And then you find out that this guy, Harry Hoosier, was such an influence that they literally named the state mascot after him, the Hoosiers. And it kind of came from because these people would get converted and then their lives would change. And then you would see a better result in the culture. Imagine that. That's what the gospel's supposed to do, right? That they would call, those are those Hoosiers. Because they've been following Harry. Anyway, there's so many stories like that in history we've just lost. You know, take the kid, 16-year-old Sybil Ludington. My daughter loves to tell that story because most young people think, I can't make a difference, I'm too young. But when you learn about Dicey Langston, 15-year-old, Sybil Ludington, 16, Washington at 23 at the Battle of Monongahela, Nathan Hale at 21. When you hear those things, you start going, wow, well, maybe at 15, maybe I can get involved to make a difference, or at 20, maybe I can. And that's the whole purpose, is to inspire citizens to do something. Get off the couch and do something. Stop just complaining and do something, which is what you guys do. That's why I think this is such a great relationship that's going to create so much more energy for people.
You're going to see Patriot Academy a lot on Grassroots 50 in every one of the 50 states because this is information that needs to get out. You know, another one of the stories that I love to share is the codfish debate.
Oh my goodness, You know, the whole thing about bailouts always just sat wrong with me. It was like, as soon as they started, well, in fact, when I served in the legislature, W was governor. So my first term, I worked with him to pass some good legislation, stopping cities from suing gun manufacturers and all this crazy stuff that the Clinton administration was going to do. And so when he became president, he was like my fellow Texan, right?
Right.
And then the crisis hits in 2008, and he gives this speech where he says, I'm normally a free market guy, but these are not normal times. And immediately all I could think is, hey, when things are crazy, that's when your principles matter the most.
That's when it should be
That's
normal
when you
times.
need to lean on
Back to the normal.
Yes, and instead they did the bailouts, and then of course the Obama administration just built on that and did even more in bailouts, and we've seen the same thing happen now. So David Barton gets all these calls from congressmen during that whole debate over bailouts. Hey, has this ever happened before? And he tells a great story. I'm going to say you got to do the classic, but he that the founders dealt with. There's nothing new under the sun, man. Nothing new under the sun.
New. And isn't it amazing that any social issue that we have today, all you have to do is look. Who are we? We're sovereign, right? Because we are made in the image of God. It's God, man, government, right? So all of our social issues, we don't have to have the answer. We just say, God, what do we do in this case? And he already tells us.
Man, there's a fundamental principle that the founders understood that we've lost, and that is that all the answers are in God's word. That if we would just realize that the creator of the universe created an instruction manual for us and gave it to us, and if we follow the instruction manual, we get our bodies last longer, our brains do better, our relationships are stronger, our societies do better. And it doesn't even mean, this is why guys like Thomas Paine that hated organized religion, or Ben Franklin, who was not a Christian, loved the Christian religion.
Right.
Because they saw that when people followed the instruction manual, society did better. And so even this insanity we're dealing with now, all the answers are there. If we'll just go take those answers. David Barton has a CD called Thinking Biblically, Speaking Secularly. So we do have to be strategic about it, right? We get the truth from God's word, and then we go out into the public square and we learn how to articulate that in a way that we can win over people that may not necessarily share our faith or share our values, but they want the results.
Well, you bring it down to a common sense approach. It's almost like, how can you argue with this being so easy to understand, but it's from a biblical perspective.
Right.
Now, I didn't tell you, he just didn't start Patriot Academy. He just didn't work with David Barton. You were actually a legislator in this great state of Texas.
Yeah.
Now, how old were you when you were in?
I was probably too young, man. I was 26 when I ran.
That was young.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
very
I
young.
had run a business. I had 13 employees. Had a family. Had paid property taxes. So I got out of school early and all that. So I was more like a 35-year-old in terms of stuff I was doing. But if I had it to do over again, I probably would have waited another 5 years. So I always tell my kids that go through Patriot Academy, they're usually 18, 19. Yeah. I say, wait until you've done something in life. I did have a graduate get elected to the West Virginia legislature last year that's only 20.
Wow.
But he was an old soul. Like, he came to our program at 16. I'm like, you act like you're 30, man. He's done a great job. He got voted #1 conservative record of everybody in the West Virginia legislature. Anyway, all that to say, while I was in the legislature, there were very few, even in Texas. Everybody thinks Texas, bastion of conservatism. It's not. We're purple at best. And there were just so few people that could get an issue in front of them and go, okay, what's my plumb line? What's the truth that I can measure these principles against? Small group, maybe about 15 out of 150 that were like that could articulate why they believe what they believe. And that's when I thought, man, we've got to have a way to raise up kids that will really understand what they're fighting for and be good at it. Like, how to win, be able to communicate well. And I was fighting textbooks 25 years ago in Texas that said socialism, communism, and capitalism are 3 equal ways to form a society, just pick. In other words, it was moral relativism of how your political and economic structures work. So they were already doing cultural Marxism. And so I was having to fight that in literally the late 90s. So I knew we had to do something different. And we can't train every kid in the country, but we can train the tip of the spear. And that's what we do at Patriot Academy. We raise up the Navy SEALs of civics.
Yeah.
The tip of the spear that can then be the men and women of Issachar that understand the times and know what to do and go out and win the culture.
Now, is this how you joined with David Barton? Because I know he was instrumental
in the
textbooks.
Patriot Academy.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but I mean the textbooks within the legislature.
Exactly. Yeah. I met him when I was running for office. He came down and campaigned for me. Now, I had already listened to all of his stuff. Like my University on Wheels was a box about this size with every cassette tape. That's how old I am.
All the American Heritage collection.
American Heritage, America's Godly Heritage, all these cassette tapes. And I just memorized everything that he did.
Wow.
And so I'd go out and speak, and this stuff I'd just rattle this stuff off while I was giving a speech, and his mom and dad were there, and I didn't know it. And he doesn't tell the story the same way, and they've gone to glory. But we used to laugh about this. I always tell everybody his mom went to him and said, "Hey, this kid down there in Dripping Springs has stolen all your material. You might as well hire him." So that's how we got to be. After that, I said, "He's my hero." You know,
right.
If I could learn at his feet. And I prayed about it, and I've always been an entrepreneur, did my own thing, right? I never worked for anybody up until this point, and I felt like the Lord was saying, humble yourself, go work for this guy for 2 years, and then go do whatever you want to do. Well, 23 years later, I'm still with him.
And it was more of a mentorship.
Yeah.
It was something that was equally yoked, but it was a symbiotic relationship.
Man.
Now, when you and we encourage you to go to Patriot Academy and get some of the material. They're having these classes all over.
Yeah.
And you can hook up locally, no matter where you are in the country, with somebody who's doing these classes.
Or do it yourself. It's free.
Yeah.
We give it away for free. So,
yeah, absolutely. So we see your children there in the first couple episodes, and they're really little. And by the time we get to the end, they've grown
suddenly grew
quite
up.
a bit. Yeah. And now you tell me that your daughter, who I saw it, what was she like?
I wish she was here, man. I get her on. I mean, she is here, but I don't know where here she is.
She's like 6 years old, and now she's 23?
She's 23, yeah.
But you haven't changed. You look exactly. It looks exactly the same as those first videos.
We still use the footage.
I know.
From Independence Hall that first time. And I've taught the class at Independence Hall a million times since then. I don't like going to Philly anymore. That's why we're building our own Independence Hall in Fredericksburg, Texas. But and some people say, like, why don't you redo the class, refilm the class or whatever? And I said, I don't think I could capture the awe that I felt that first time in there, and my kids being that young. So we've kept it in there, but I had more hair and I looked a lot younger.
You really have to try it. Now we've been doing the biblical citizenship, but you have so much information. I think my whole desk is now covered with all of your DVDs and all of your flash drives and everything. Everybody walks in and they're like, how many of these books do you need? I said, I need a lot because we're giving these out.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's so affordable. I mean, like you said, you can go on, you can educate yourself for free. You can also do so much more, because when you sit in a room with your family and your friends, and all of a sudden you discover these things for the first time, and you're like, wait a second, you mean Paul Revere went one way and there was another writer going another way?
Yeah.
Why didn't anybody tell me? You mean to tell me that the United States Navy was a rowboat with a cannon facing one direction and another cannon facing the other direction? We're like, how could you? With the exception of having the divine intervention, the hand of God on this would have never happened.
That's right. And to know that now, when a lot of people are giving up, they're saying America's gone, it's too late, it's too far gone. They need to hear those stories you were just talking about. I mean, here we are getting close to Christmas. They should hear the story of Washington crossing the Delaware on Christmas night and what went into that, and how he was at the bottom of the bottom, man, lost battle after battle. 90% of his troops had deserted him. I mean, he's down to the bare bones. Every country has said, no, we're not going to help you. He makes this impossible decision with faith in God and in his troops, with a password, victory or death, that night. I mean, and then ends up with this incredible comeback. I mean, those stories right now are needed, right? We need to know, you know what, all this stuff we're facing, number one, there's an answer to it. We can do something about it. We're not alone. But also that it's not the first time we've faced tough times. And I love telling the stories, because it helps kind of shake people out of the doldrums of thinking, man, it's too far gone.
Yeah.
It's not too far gone. I can't guarantee we're going to save it, because most nations fall apart at 250 years. So we're kind of right on time. The culture's crumbling right on time. The question is, can we interrupt the cycle that people have historically had because of that incredible foundation that the founders gave us, because of the principles they gave us?
I always say, couldn't we just have a big button and it says push to factory reset?
Right.
Just hit that. Tell us one more story. Nathan Hale.
Yeah.
It's so inspirational, and you've heard the saying before, but tell us just a little bit about this, because this hits me right here.
Well, he had your hairdo, so at least
I'm trying to be a founding father. That's what I'm doing.
I love it. If I could grow it, I would, but I can't. So anyway, no, think about it. He's 21 years old, and Washington's trying to figure out. This is after the defeats at New York, or the first defeat at New York. and he's trying to get a spy. And we didn't have many spies, but that was before.
Well, people really didn't even know what a spy was.
Yeah, and
right?
if they did, they hated you because that meant you were a turncoater. You were, you were going to be hung on capture, so it was bad reputation, everything. And so Washington had this group, Colonel Tom Knowlton. They were really the first Rangers, and they were kind of the special forces. And so he tells Knowlton, you got to get somebody out of your team to volunteer to sneak across enemy lines and get us the information that we need. So he has this meeting in his tent, and nobody's willing. But Nathan Hale wasn't there yet. He actually got to the meeting late because he was actually sick. He had a fever. I mean, the fact that he volunteered when he was sick. Anyway, he gets there late, just as Knowlton's about to give up and leave. Hale steps up at 21 and says, I'll do it. I'll volunteer for the mission.
Wow.
Well, he had a friend he had gone to Yale with named William Hull. And Captain Hull writes about this later on. And he said, I took him outside real quick and I said, you can't do this. Number one, your reputation is going to be ruined. Your family name is going to be ruined because you became a spy. Number two, you're a terrible liar, which means you won't be a good spy. You're not going to be good at lying. You're a great orator because they did all these speeches back in college. Anyway, Hall tries to talk him out of it, and he basically says there's no honor in this. And he says that Hale said, the general needs me, the cause needs me, there's honor in answering the call. So he dresses up as a teacher once again. He had been a teacher after Yale. He studied for the ministry, but he went to New London, Connecticut to be a teacher. And he gets his diploma, uses that as kind of his cover, if you will. Gets across enemy lines. He writes everything down that he's doing in terms of the troop movements, the fortifications, which was a mistake, right? But he writes it down, shoves it in his boot, so the evidence is on him when he gets caught. And when they see the evidence, they say, you're going to die. We're hanging you the next day. And so he asked for a member of the clergy. He asked for a Bible. They wouldn't give him either of those. They did give him paper and pen to write home to his family. We've not been able to track down the letters. But he ends up the next day when they hang him, right before they hang him, he ends up being given the chance to speak. And he gives that famous line that most people know him for. And there's 4 different accounts. And in one of them, they say that he said, my only regret is that I have but one life to give for my country. The other 3 say one life to lose. I like give, so I always use that version. But he did. He gave this great speech, quotes from Joseph Addison's Cato. That's essentially what he was summarizing. They take his life, but those words live on, and they inspired others to join the cause. And here we are, how many generations? 10 generations later, we still are inspired by it. I only regret that I have but one life to give for my country. Right? You and I only have one life to give. Everybody watching this, you've got one life to give. The question is, for what will you give your one life? Your nation needs you right now to step up and start giving of your time, that's your life, of your money, that's your fortune, and your sacred honors, your reputation. I don't know how much you can give of those 3, but start giving all that you can, and let's save this nation.
Amen. Boy, Rick Green, I'm telling you, you will be inspired. You will be definitely enhanced. Your mind will be blown when you hear some of these stories. Patriot Academy, tell me just really quick,
Fredericksburg, Texas. It's kind of west of San Antonio and Austin.
Okay.
So we're in the heart of the hill country. It's a beautiful, wonderful
How big
town.
is the property?
178 acres.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna be amazing, man. We're already built all the gun ranges on the back of the property. So we do this thing called constitutional defense. We train handgun defense during the day and constitution training at night. We've trained 5,000 people on this. Well, I want to have a sheepdog in every restaurant, every hotel, every Walmart, every church, every school. Dirtbag comes in, we want trained citizens, not just good guys with guns. You need trained good guys and gals with guns. Anyway, so we're doing that on the back of the property. On the front, we're building Independence Hall, Monticello. We're going to rebuild the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol, smaller, but all those 8 paintings and statues so that when you come to the campus, you basically get the Disneyland for Patriots.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, are they able to visit there now?
Yeah.
How do they sign up for this?
Yeah, you can come now to the handgun defense class. We're still building everything else. We've only had the property for a year, so we're moving fast. But we've got our classroom.
That's a lot of land, though. That's awesome.
And it's beautiful, man. You'll love it. You'll love it.
Is it forested at all? I mean, what's the
our
terrain?
trees in Texas are not what most people in the country call trees.
Are you
more
flat?
like bushes.
Are you flat?
No, it's in the hill country, so
Yeah.
it's wonderful. The topography is incredible. So we're super, super excited about that. It's basically a place to rebuild liberty. I mean, we're going to have families come in for 1 week at a time, get to do a handgun class, study the Constitution in Independence Hall, be a legislator for a couple of days, really learn what a constitutional republic is, and then go back to their community and be a Constitution coach. But we're going to have 18 to 19-year-olds come in for 1 year. And so they really get grounded before they go waste $200,000 on college, get a degree they don't need, before they go get woke. come spend a year with us, and whether you go into politics, business, the arts, whatever God's called you to, it's a great opportunity to get grounded and become a leader before you go into whatever God's purpose is for you.
That's amazing. All right, now we know that our 250th anniversary is coming up for Constitution. Now, this is going to be 2000 and...
Or for the Declaration, 250th for the Declaration. July 4th, 2026.
Okay.
So 2 years, 199 days.
All right.
I'm counting because we want to have our Independence Hall built in time to cut the ribbon, and I want you there for
be there for
July
sure.
4th, 2026. Start making plans.
And we're going to try to do some big Constitution Day events. This is in September
17th. Yes.
And so we're going to try to bring Rick here to Arizona with some other people.
Let's do it.
And we want to make that to be something big because, I mean, you said it yourself. Declaration is like the foundation. The Constitution sits on that.
On it.
Bill of Rights. We have to build that up. We have to instill this into our youth, even though they only have, a 3-second attention span. We can do a lot in 3 seconds,
That's right.
All right.
You got to make it entertaining, folks. If you don't make it entertaining, they won't learn. And that's what we're really good at.
PatriotAcademy.com.
PatriotAcademy.com.
You got to visit, sign up, become a coach, bring it to your town, bring it to your relatives, your family. I'm telling you, it will change your life.
And the magic happens when the video's over. I think we do a really good job of making it entertaining and fun, but when that video stops and you start talking to your family and your friends and people from your church about what you just learned, it's incredible. It's incredible.
All right, Rick,
God bless
thanks
you,
so much.
Thanks for what you
too. And it's Ray Michaels here with Grassroots 50, Total News Nation Network. Stick around. We got plenty more coming. Rick, always a pleasure.
Loved it, man.
Until next time, we'll see you real soon.